So the ABx purpose is to deliver materials for a cleaner future. Skip to the next slide. And again, so as Paul outlined there, ABx has two priority areas. First of which is establishing a rare earth project in northern Tasmania. The second is we've developed a process to recycle aluminium smelter waste into valuable chemicals, including aluminium fluoride, which aluminium smelters require. And our legacy business is bauxite exploration and mining, which is actually where ABx started, but that's very much a legacy part of the business today. Today, I've only got a short amount of time, so I'm just going to talk about the rare earth project, but there's plenty of opportunity to see information on our other projects on our website. Next slide. So rare earths, you probably have heard that the rare earth demand is growing a lot, and lots of people are excited about looking for more rare earths and producing them. When we talk about rare earths, we're really in the market, we're really talking about permanent magnets. That's why the demand is growing a lot. They're needed for electric vehicles and wind turbines. So the only way the demand for these magnets won't grow a lot is if we abandon the idea of the renewable economy. And so 90% of the rare earths market is these permanent magnets. And there's about 15 different rare earth elements. 4 of them are needed for the magnets, and they're shown on the right. We call them NdPr, Dy, and Tb. Next slide. So there's broadly 2 types of rare earth deposits. On the left, the more common one is called a hard rock deposit. That's like the Linus deposit in Western Australia. And what's highlighted there is about 25% of the rare earths in it are Nd and Pr, the lime green, so that's valuable. There's almost none of the Dy/Tb, which are the most valuable rare earths. There's almost none in those type of deposits. A less common type of deposit, the one that ABx has, is shown on the right, and they're called an ionic adsorption clay deposit. The really critical feature of these is that now there's about a few percent of Dy and Tb. So of the rare earths, a few percent of them are Dy/Tb, and that's about half the value of that deposit. And it'll highlight there that of all the clay rare earth projects in Australia, the ABx one has the highest proportion of Dy and Tb, which means it's the product is more valuable. So next slide. So we're about developing a project. We're not just trying to drill and make a big resource. We're trying to create a project, and this slide just summarizes all the aspects that we're thinking about as we develop the project, and I'll summarize them now in the following slides. So first one is, so we're the first company to find rare earths in Australia. We're in northern Tasmania. Our main area is just west of Launceston, near Deloraine. We've got other exploration tenements around Launceston. Some of them are recent, and some of these are old tenements that we'd use for bauxite exploration. And the 2 distinctive features that set us apart, our resource apart from others, is one, as I said, we've got the highest proportion of Dy and Tb, makes it more valuable. And the second aspect, and what we say we've got the highest ionic component. And what that means is we've got the highest proportion of rare earths within the deposit that are extractable at low cost. You can have clay rare earth resources with a very low ionic component or a 0 ionic component. They're basically not very valuable because they're too expensive to extract. And ours looks like the best in Australia in that regard, and comparable to the existing mines of these type of deposits, which are in China. China basically controls the market for this type of production at the moment. Next slide. So we've been drilling for rare earths for over 2 years now. We announced our maiden resource estimate in late 2022, and the most recent one just last week, in fact. So now we're at 89 million tonnes. And so we're rapidly growing the resource. There's a lot more scope to grow it larger. Actually, because the rare earths market is not particularly large, what matters more is, can you find a high-grade zone that's big enough? So our drilling program is more focused on finding the highest grade zone. So on the map there, those purple areas are the best. They're the highest grade zones. So that's what our drilling strategy will continue to look for. It will continue to increase the tons as well, just in general. There's lots of scope for that, but the focus is on high grade. Next slide. And this tries to explain why this ionic proportion is important, and what it's because is if you know the price you get for your product is the same, no matter is it ionic or not. But having a higher ionic proportion means you need less reagents to extract the rare earths, and so your cost is low. So that left-hand side of the blue curve. If you have a lower ionic component, you need to use a lot more reagents, and your cost of production goes up a lot. And you can see on the right, you know, your reagents alone are now worth more than the product. And so it's a very steep cost curve. You know, this is a very dynamic market growing quickly. Well, we know that there's a huge opportunity there, but you've got to be at the best end of the cost curve. If you're at the poor end of the cost curve, you know, you don't have, it's a very low probability. And all the industry experts that I've spoken to say, yeah, to get low cost processing, you need to have a high ionic component, and we have the best one in Australia. Okay, next slide. Equally important for a mining project is the infrastructure. So Northern Tasmania is actually a great spot. We're close to the major highway running from Launceston across to Devonport. We're less than 100 kilometres from the Bell Bay port near Georgetown on the northern edge of Tasmania, an existing heavy industrial area with an aluminium smelter and a ferromanganese smelter where we've previously exported bauxite from. We're less than 50 kilometres from Launceston, you know, access to labour, etc. I live in Melbourne. I can be at our exploration site in 3 hours. You know, it's very accessible. And then water and energy, also very good in Northern Tasmania. So all those critical factors for a project, we're well set up. Next slide. Also, the actual region is important for multiple dimensions. Australia is very attractive for rare earth supply. So what you've got right now is the whole, you know, Western world going, my God, we need these rare earths to grow the renewable energy industry, but also for military applications. We're currently totally reliant mostly on China. How do we get more production up? So Australia is a very attractive place. So I talk to potential customers, say North America, and they say, you know, we love the idea of getting more rare earths out of Australia. Tasmania itself has a long, proud history in mining, over 100 years. And you can see the map there. There's mines all over the state. Particularly Northern Tasmania is an excellent place for mining. And then in where our resource is actually located is mostly commercial forestry. So it's already heavily affected land. It's a fairly straightforward commercial negotiation to say to the forestry company, look, can we have access to some of your land for a period of time? We'll mine the rare earths, and then we'll rehabilitate it actually to a better standard than when you first gave it to us. In fact, we've done that previously with a bauxite mine in Northern Tasmania where, yeah, it was actually farmland, but the standard we gave it back to the farmer was better than when we started with it. Okay, next slide. And people-wise, we've got a good mix of geology and engineers, chemical engineers that you need with rare earths. It's not just a mining project; it's a mining and chemical engineering processing project. And those people collectively within the company have a long experience in Tasmania. So we listed in 2009, been active exploring for bauxite in Tasmania in 2010. We've mined bauxite in Tasmania. So we've got good relationships and knowledge, you know, with the government and the regulators and the local communities. And following, you know, as part of that, we're actually currently got a mine lease application in for a second bauxite mine, which we expect to be approved this year. So we're very well set up to expand on our bauxite history to establish a rare earth project. Next slide. So if you're an investor looking, oh, look, can these guys really get up a project and how do they stack up against our competitors? Yes, you know, we tick all the boxes. So the distinctive features are, just to repeat, the high proportion of the most valuable rare earths, Dy and Tb, and the highest ionic proportion, which means it's low cost processing. and we tick all the other boxes, the infrastructure, the jurisdiction, and the people. So we're very well set up to create a project. Next slide. So our strategy, what we want to do is, as rapidly as possible, set up low-cost production of a mixed rare earth carbonate. So what that means is you dig up the rare earth resource out of the ground, you do some processing, which basically gets rid of all the non-rare earth parts, and you're left with a mixed, it's all the rare earths mixed together in a carbonate form. Then you can sell that to an existing refinery. There's Lynas has one in Malaysia, Aluka's building one in Australia. There's others proposed in North America. And the reason for that strategy is it's basically low capex. So we don't have to invest the capex to build the separation plant. A couple of sort of analogous ionic clay projects around the world are looking at $100–150 million capex. It's a reasonable amount of money, but it's a lot better than $1 billion or more that most of the hard rock rare earth projects are looking at. Now, plan over the rest of this year, laboratory and pilot plant studies on the flow sheet, and then moving into the economic assessments of scoping studies, etc. And we're spending a lot of effort on customer engagement, and the discussions with prospective customers include prospective investment. That's how we see these projects getting up, is multiple parties within the value chain collectively attracting investment to create the projects. And there'll be further exploration during the year, which will continue to expand the resource. Next slide. So thanks for your time, and happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Mark. Great presentation. And yeah, we've got a very interactive audience today, so I'll try and get through as many questions as I can. First one off the bat, your resource estimate now sits around 89 million tonnes. What can we expect in terms of growing this number for the remainder of this year?
Well, as I said, we're certainly continuing more drilling. We were just talking internally with the team this morning. We'll be starting again before the end of May. It's hard to predict how much larger it will get, but I certainly expect a continual growth as we've demonstrated over the last 12 months.
And then a question here regarding slide 6. In slide 6 of the presentation outlines what is needed for a rare earth project. When will ABx transition from drilling to turning their mind to approvals, etc., to get the project moving along?
Well, I think we're doing that now. I guess the work that's more seen publicly is our resource estimates. But as I said, we're talking to prospective customers. We're talking to the local governments, state governments. So very much we've all got that in mind. I guess we haven't been able to announce too much yet, but that's something we're actively working on right now.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And a question here. The federal government recently approved a debt package for one of your competitors, Arafura's Nolans project. What is the read-through for ABx?
So what is the something for ABx?
What is the read-through for ABx? I think that what the question they're asking, Mark, is that one of your competitors got a federal debt package. Is there any chance that you could get one as well?
Yes. So what's the model that the federal government appears to be using, which makes sense, is companies at the earlier stage of development, like ABx. There's grant programs. So in fact, there's grants that we've looked at and applied for that we're waiting to hear from. The debt funding is more for more advanced projects that, say, for example, have done definitive feasibility studies. So both Aluka and Arafura got loans under good terms under that arrangement. So absolutely, and we've talked to those same debt providers like Export Finance Australia, and they say absolutely, we'd look at supporting you when you're further advanced. So it's something that we will be pursuing at the right time.
And so just a quick question from me. How does ABx's rare earth project compare to Arafura's?
Well, it's quite different. It's really comparing an apple and an orange. So because Arafura's is a hard rock. So Arafura, Lynas, most of the others are hard rock deposits. They've got various pros and cons compared to each other. There's the ionic clay projects are complementary because what the ionic clays have is those two heavy rare earths, Dy and Tb. So no matter how much we produce out of the hard rock deposits, that can get enough Nd and Pr, but we can't get the Dy and Tb. So the real compelling appeal of the ionic clays is that Dy Tb at an affordable cost.
Gotcha. A question here: how does your resource size compare to the industry averages?
Well, I don't say, we'd probably say we're in the middle. There's some that are larger, some that are smaller. As I tried to say earlier, what is actually more important is the grade, the grade and the ionic proportion and the proportion of Dy and Tb. There are a lot of tons out there. Most of them aren't viable to extract. So investors need to look at that combination of tons, grade, ionic proportion, and proportion of Dy Tb to evaluate, to compare the different prospects.
Gotcha. And the question here: what is the status of the Alcor Bath pilot batch reactor currently, and when can we expect the next set of results?
So we're actively using it right now, that pilot batch reactor. I would expect results further results before mid-year, before the end of June. That'd be the rough plan, I'd say.
Okay, and one here: how is the pipeline looking for your bauxite offtake agreements?
Yeah, so in Tasmania, we've got a non-binding agreement with Adelaide Brighton, a cement plant in Adelaide, to supply bauxite to them over 5 years. That's nicely profitable to us per ton. The tons aren't huge, but it's good cash flow. A bigger project in Queensland, that's a longer process. We have a JV partner where we're together trying to attract funding. It's at least a year away, but it's still a very appealing project. We're getting more and more inquiries globally for bauxite. The market is clearly getting tighter and tighter, so we think it's still a great medium-term prospect for the company.
And a question here, I get asked this a lot on these webinars about the approvals in place for the project. This person saying, there have been, given the environmental and farming concerns that often loom large in Tasmania, how's those approvals going?
Yeah, it's a good question. And so I guess the rare earth project is at a stage where we haven't applied for those approvals yet. It's a bit premature. The advantage ABx has is because we have this history of bauxite, and we still have current bauxite activities. We know about those. We know about the approvals processes, and we have a lot of confidence in being able to apply them to the rare earth. So, as I said, we've previously mined bauxite. We've rehabilitated it. We were held up as an exemplar for rehabilitation. We regularly get approval for exploration drilling. We've got an application in place now for a second bauxite mine, and our rare earth resource is primarily based on commercial forestry land, not farmland or elsewhere that would be more difficult to get approvals for.
And just want to finish up. There's been a lot of debate on the pricing of rare earths. It seems to be some stabilisation back off their lows. Any thoughts or wisdom you can give us on your thoughts on where rare earth prices are going over the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, interesting. I guess I'm loath to make predictions. We know, price will be a function of relative demand and supply over the long term. And I've looked at this a lot. I can't reach any other conclusion than the demand's going to grow a lot. Like I said, the only way that won't happen really is if we abandon the idea of having a lot of electric vehicles and wind turbines. I think that horse is running. Yep. Therefore, there's a need for a lot of new supply. Clearly, not everyone will get up. What you need to be is at the low end of the cost curve. And that's our strategy. Our high DyTb content and high ionic proportion means that we should be at the low end of the cost curve, which means 1, we are viable, and 2, we should be highly profitable. I think any project that's sort of moderate on those parameters is at much more risk, because there's a lot of people trying to get new supply in. You want to be at the low end of the cost curve.
Mark, as always, absolute pleasure. Great presentation. We're keeping a close eye on the ABx story. There are a couple of questions we haven't had a chance to answer. If you can do that afterwards, that'd be much appreciated. But you have a great weekend, and thanks for your time.
Great. Thank you, Paul. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.